And so there's that. Now, we mentioned the women's basketball numbers, and Craig just kind of alluded to it again at 9.9 million. It also peaked out at about 12 million at one point, and a combination of ESPN plus ABC. And here is what it compared to. For some college football perspective, 9.9 million viewers for the women's championship game on Sunday was more than those three bowl games, any of them, Sugar, Orange, and Cotton, the Big 12, Pac-12, and ACC title games, Notre Dame and USC's game, LSU, Alabama, Ohio State, Penn State, and that game between Alabama and Texas A&M, primetime game on CBS. That's the kind of audience they had. Now, one of the things that, and I mentioned this in Paul and Craig, and it is great for the game, is that it was for the first time since 1995 on a network, on an actual standard network show, like not ESPN, but on ABC. And so that goes to show you they have more eyeballs, more opportunities. They took advantage of it with a game that, of course, got a lot of attention.
So I've got the rating now.
Okay,
what
good.
do y'all think it if y'all were to go 9.9 million for the women.
I'm going to still say it's at 10.5.
I'll go a little higher than that on a Saturday. Yeah.
No, you're talking about last night.
Last night?
Last night's rating.
Last night's rating? I don't think it's going to be 10.5. I think it's going to be lower. I think it'd probably be 8.5.
How about the most watched basketball game over the past year?
Oh, wow, really?
14.7 million for San Diego State and UConn. That's shocking to me. I guess maybe UConn and just the rush of San Diego State and being a new team to the dance sparked. I would not have expected that. I still, if I had to go and lay down like the paycheck on it, I think I'd probably default like the men's game scores slightly higher just because that's history saying that. I definitely wouldn't have gone that high though. That's 5 million more than watched the most tuned in women's game of all time, and this was not a well publicized, super amped up title game by any means. Other than just the fact that it was so different, but I guess different was appealing. 14.7 million for the championship game, number one most watched basketball game over the last year. And for perspective, you'd have to go to the number 12 spot to find the women's national title game at 9.9 million, behind a bunch of NBA games, mostly Golden State and Boston. From the NBA Finals, those were a lot of the top draws. Matter of fact, those were the most of the top 10. Miami, Texas was 10th watch. That, along with Michigan State and Marquette, edged the women's game as well. But UConn and the Miami game, 12.9. So UConn, that fan base, and then San Diego State also drew huge for that Florida Atlantic game. So the combination actually worked out really well. Good for them. That's an awesome number that is way higher than I expected. So, yeah, 14.7 million, most watched game of the last year.
Well, that doesn't surprise me that the men still outdrew the women. The women's game peaked, and we know that there was so much interest in it with Iowa, Caitlin Clark, and also with LSU making their run. And then South Carolina, the upset on Friday that led to that championship game. It's getting more and more attention. It was on ABC, but still men's basketball is a billion-dollar contract for a reason.
Yeah.
And UConn's fan base is obviously incredibly loyal, but also they're in the Big East. And the Big East, not everybody, but the Big East is a basketball pretty much only conference, if you think about it, when it comes to their history and tradition. I know that there's football, but that it's all those teams that played against UConn. The fan bases that follow that conference also came to the table too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'd say it surprised me. I just thought because, there was not a whole lot of buzz about it that maybe people would tune in. But clearly there's no fatigue, and people enjoyed this year's tournament. It's all the way through to the end. And sports just continues to be, the driver of television right now, and I'm surprised that the money. I mean, I'm not surprised. The money is, as we saw for college football and some things, is maybe drying up a little bit. But the people aren't. People are tuning in for it. Got to capitalize. Both men's and women's college basketball need to capitalize on this. You've got to figure out. Now, you're not going to get 14 million every night on college basketball during the year, but how do you make sure that you get some 2, 3, 4 million viewers more often than you do? Like, how do you get those? How do you make sure that you capitalize on this audience and keep them there? How does women's basketball, when, in the non-conference, if South Carolina plays UConn, how do you make sure that that's a 2 million viewed game every time? That's what you need to do, because that's how you're going to increase the value of the game. Make sure you put it in a good spot. And then when you're men's basketball, like, figure out, a way to deliver what is a better product over and over and over again, and maybe don't let football step on your toes as much. If that means moving things around to start the season, maybe do that so you can hit the ground running a little faster.
Well, it's a huge night, Craig. Those numbers are much higher. I thought no matter what, would outdraw the women's audience, which was a phenomenal number. But, man, that was 4 million, even more than I thought. A lot of people on the chat room, when you asked that question, were putting up numbers like 6.8, 11, 7.3, and others. And here we are with that massive number of just over 14 million.
Outdrew every NBA Finals game. Think about that. Golden State and Boston, it outdrew every single one of those games. So, yeah, I mean, that was – I thought that there was a chance the women's game could be higher because, I mean, look, 10 million people is a lot of people. That's a lot of eyeballs. But, yeah, I mean, prime time, Monday night, the last game of the men's season, and it was a great tournament. So, yeah, America showed up in droves, and that was a very good number and something that I definitely think that San Diego State can tuck away as a consolation prize and probably helps propel them further into whatever their new future looks like. And for UConn, I mean, they're on a heck of a run, as we mentioned a few times now, and we'll see where they can continue to take it. But they're in some rare air now at number 5, whether you're talking football or basketball. So that's quite the feat that they've pulled off.
Roger Dodger, I wonder if they could somehow, and they probably will, have the Southern Cal numbers, TV numbers, when it comes to what San Diego State may have pulled in for being in that game, and eventually they'll be able to break it down. I don't get that, but Craig gets the numbers. He usually does it with Off the Radar. Won't be there today during that segment because Baylor football and the access that he and Jack will be able to watch for just a little bit, and then a media session a little bit after 6 o'clock. Tim Brand.